this should be interesting. Welcome back to the Sunshine State Rails. We're starting the weekend off early, Friday evening, September 3rd, 2021, and we're encompassed by a bit of rain and chance that would decide the fate of this next hour. Driving north on I-75 to Tampa on word of some special engines on the head of Q442, a nightly mixed freight from Tampa to Waycross, Georgia each evening, but having been a fairly sudden outing, I had no radios on me this evening. So, as I mentioned, I would be relying on nothing but chance and experience this night. We knew we were pretty good on time though, and crossing the Tampa Bypass Canal just after 6:45 in the evening, there was the bottom of Q442, having presumably just finished building his train out of the yard tracks. So with that confirmed, we drove up to Falkenberg Road, which is where Yeoman Yard crews will drive the conductor up to from the bottom so he can board the lead engine and the train can take off northward. And how good a timing we had, as we pulled into Falkenberg right behind the car carrying the conductor, and the train was already on the move. Just after 7 p.m., Q44203 blasts off from Falkenberg with 4 EMD locomotives for power. Well, only 3 of them were online, 2 SD40-3s sandwiching an SD40-2. Those SD40s would be pulling, but that GP38-3 in the 4th spot was dead in tow, headed to Waycross for servicing. With that, we had no time to waste. On the interstate, we jumped again over to Plant City, with a sunset that was just fading in the background, and even then with just barely enough time. About 3 minutes to spare. Northward, we too blasted from Plant City on the Paul Buckman Highway, catching up with the lead engines just in the middle of Plant City siding. Now just past the north switch of Plant City siding, the train's bottom end is now clear of the downtown populace of Plant City, and the engineer can crank them up a notch. And these EMD motors sure as hell show it. catching back up again through night siding, we're blocked by all these empty phosphate hoppers that are pretty much here all year for a still unknown reason. We just love to see it. Train having caught back up to us here made for a cool back in the woods shot, but created another problem. This right here. Chancey Road, we got stuck. Chancey Road is the just about 6-mile stretch from Zephyr Hills to Vitus Junction, and it crosses the S line to Tampa twice. And if you get caught at one crossing, you're gonna get caught at both. And so we did. So our next target would have been Dade City, but damn, traffic meant he beat us there too. And since night had fallen by this point, there was really not a good opportunity to just pull over and shoot it somewhere. So we made no stops and made the trek up to Bushnell. And even then, barely enough time to get out and get ready. After a bit of a hasty chase, we get an opportunity to maybe explain this train a little bit. Those first set of reefer cars at the head are all from Bradenton, carrying Tropicana products, as I'm sure you've seen a few times in other videos here. And the rest of the train is whatever Tampa has recently loaded or unloaded and is now sending north. Cement hoppers from Brooksville, empty phosphate hoppers from Rockport, empty rock hoppers from Plant City, Tampa, Largo, or Palmetto, and 1,000 other things arranged in a way that I could never start to explain. It's all headed away cross, and all of this stuff will get broken up and sent all a bunch of different ways into the US. But with the train blasting off into the darkness, that was no concern of ours. Our chase was done, and so was the night. Until a couple days later. And I might note now that the leader from this train tonight was CSX number 4032. And surprise, it's back. It's now the late morning of September 5th, and on a drive south from Lakeland, we run into the Tropicana juice train, or what's left of it, 0823. And that 4032 has made a return trip from Waycross on Q441, having now been paired with a recently reactivated C40-9W. As a quick reference, earlier this morning we were over in Lakeland to catch a presumed NO40, though they screwed us a little bit. NO40 is as-needed coal loads out of the Sugar Camp mine in Indiana down to the Orlando, Florida Stanton Energy Center. This was going to be the morning that I did what I've been saying I'm going to do, chasing one of these trains all the way to the Stanton plant. That was until this train rounded the corner and we saw that there was one GEVO on the head. After a bit of looking afterwards, we figured that this was either a completely different train or they took the power that we had wanted off. Because when we first heard about this train, there were 3 locomotives at the front, 2 of them being old Yellow-Nose 2 AC 4400s. But that is not what rounded Lakeland Junction just after 9 o'clock that morning. Still a neat catch, especially in the good light in the mornings at Lakeland Junction, but needless to say there would be no chase to the plant this day. And it was after the rear end of this coal train cleared the junction with a very interesting DPU placement that we would head back south to try to find the juice train. Just gonna say this now, I have no idea why they do this. Having an odd DPU on a manifest train would make sense, possibly due to block swapping or changing of consist en route, but this is a unit train, so I have genuinely no idea why this was done. Back on the juice train's tail, we're rolling back up to the Little Manatee River, so we'd hop right across to the other side and snag him coming around a corner just north of Ruskin. And one more time, just north of Gibsonton. What's up, Danny? That's my friend Danny there off to the left. As one may probably have assumed, these are the same reefers that were at the front of Q442 at the beginning of the video, coming fresh out of Bradenton, and some miscellaneous freight near the back. A couple hours pass before we find ourselves set back up by the tracks at Miller Road, at a crossing on a shallow curve that begins the Valrico subdivision, which breaks off of the S line at Valrico Junction. We're set up here on radio word of a K339 having departed the East Tampa Riverview Phosphate Plant, headed to the Ag Rock Four Corners Mine. A little bit of a break from the EMD show here. Some remnants of the Bone Valley's glory days. That track on the right that this train isn't on is presumably a siding left over for when the Bone Valley was super dense and traffic was almost non-stop. Hasn't been used in quite some time. Railheads are completely rusted over. But some of the trains are still running, like this one. 339 is a train set of empty phosphate hoppers returning to the mines to eventually return to the plant with freshly washed phosphate, also referred to as wet rock. Those wet rock loads will then be processed at the Riverview plant into dry rock phosphate, which will more often than not get loaded directly onto ships that dock at said plant. 339 is technically an as-needed job, but he tends to run pretty much every day. The EMD seems to be evading us for now, but by no means in a boring manner, as we find ourselves next in Ybor City, as Amtrak Silver Star number 91 backs his train through the downtown populace into Tampa Union Station to offload and load some passengers. Hitching a ride in spot number 3 would be Widecap-8 number 515. Amtrak most commonly uses these for switchers at their auto train terminals, but occasionally they can be found hitching a ride on their other trains, such as here on Amtrak 91, presumably headed to Miami for possibly maintenance. That goes without saying that 91, the southbound Silver Star, is bound for Miami. Tick another 20 minutes around the clock and 91 is done with their station stop and ready to take back off eastward for Auburndale and ultimately Miami. It's quite the aura, I must admit, with the entirety of Ybor City being lined with mechanical bells on the crossings, and 91 smoking it up out of town. What's that? More EMD calling? Yeah, it is. Couple hours later, and that EMD calling was from 070405, starting to build their train out of the west end of Yeoman Yard. Said power would be two XL&N SD40 locomotives. The leader 8024 still being in its original form, an SD40-2, and the trailing 4332 being identical but upgraded on terms of body and electronics, now an SD40-3, or as my friend Danny now refers to it, 8024's bastardized sister. To be honest, I kinda like that idea. But regardless, two Electromotive Division models, shoving back and forth to build up their local job for this evening. Concluding their switching maneuvers, they'd be pulling out some Bone Valley cars, along with some loaded National Gypsum center beams. This is all stuff that's gonna head out to Winston Yard near Lakeland later tonight, after they finish their job, which we're gonna chase here in a second. Their last move was to back on to a cut of loaded rock hoppers bound for the Conrad Yelvington Distribution Center on the Navy Spur, which is where we'd be chasing these guys up towards. Once they shoved back and hooked on, they were ready to go. They called dispatch asking for permission, but not just yet. Amtrak 92, the northbound sister of the Silver Star from just earlier, had just made its rounds through Tampa and was now headed out. They had to get him out of the way before they could let 704 onto the A-line. And kick the dust up with this one. Or kick the trash up. That works too, I suppose. The switches were lined for the new connection almost immediately, and 704 emerged from the yard just about a minute later.
Yard domain southbound.
About a mile to the northwest at 10th Avenue, we're now at the very top of the Navy Y. This is the same Y that Amtrak uses to turn its trains around to back into Tampa Union Station like we saw earlier, and 704 is now taking the south leg of that Y from the A line to the Navy Spur. Though the Navy Spur is only a handful of miles long, it's still dark territory, so nothing on the spur can be dispatcher controlled besides the signals at Navy Y. And on this stretch, trains are limited to 15 miles per hour. And there's also a very old APP signal warning trains headed towards Navy Y that signal territory is about to begin. And it's that old signal that we chose for our last spot, as there aren't many of these left burning just about anywhere in this area. just after 6 p.m. now. About a mile more to the north and 704 would arrive at the Conrad Yelvington plant, where they'd switch stuff around for about another hour and a half. Not something we were staying for. And so that concludes the EMD weekend. Let's be real here. This was just a couple random days of trains that I figured out a way to throw together into a video. I'd say it came out pretty well. And if you're still watching this after 21 minutes, I'd be one to say that you think so too. And a quick thanks to Danny for tagging along with us on this second day. Thankfully it was a good day for us, otherwise we probably would have died. But hey, it's what we do. And I thank y'all for watching every time. So until whatever the next set of weekends bring, I'll see y'all out there then on the Sunshine State Rails.